I want to share a story as far as what it's like being from a place like California, Los Angeles, and moving out here to Northwest Indiana. Now, I went to, you need to understand too, it's segregated out here. All right. So with my ex-wife, she was extremely, extremely white. So I lived in a white area called Portage. And it was a shock for me because other people from outside the area who moved here as well, whether California as well, uh, Seattle, Washington, New York, Florida, everyone always talked about just how horrible the food was and how rude the people are. So when I came out here, I'll tell you this, the first 100 worst, like rudest people I've ever met in my life, um, I met here on the first year. And that's not all of Indiana. It's not Chicago or Illinois. It's just around that one part of Northwest Indiana. These guys will say they're not from here. They're from the other side of town, like 5 miles away. Like what? On there are people who you can see Chicago from here, and they go through their whole lives looking at Chicago, saying, "Wow, look at that! God, it's so far away. I can't believe people actually go all the way out there and come back. It's so far. Look how far." Just like, what on earth? It's crazy. But when I came here, I went to a restaurant called Bob Evans. And Bob Evans, it was kind of like, Bob's Big Boy and things like that. Things that, the food we used to have back in the 80s and 90s in California, the old diner type place. So I went in there and everything just smelled very sweet. And I looked around and there was about 5 people with missing organs, or missing limbs. And I asked my ex-wife, she was my fiance at the time, like, what is this? What's going on? She said, well, it's diabetes. Diabetes out here is very common, so you'll get used to seeing a lot of people without limbs. I was thinking, that is absolutely ridiculous. Now, there's different types of diabetes. And the one out here is I can't remember what is called the difference between the two, but it has to do with their sugar intake. They won't A lot of people here, like my ex-mother-in-law, she's dead now. Terrible person. She would not eat a vegetable. She would not eat a fruit. And when we were cooking there, she laughed and threw all of the vegetables and produce away and grabbed the meal my wife cooked and redid it with just like a bunch of like pasta or something and like a nasty sauce and was insulting my, at the time fiance, my ex-wife, about putting produce in food. And no one stood up to it. It was just crazy. And she was very unhealthy. So when I was at Bob Evans and my food came out, I looked at it and I was like, what is this? I took a bite of the sausage and I had to spit it out. It would taste like pure sugar. I could not eat my pancakes. I couldn't even eat my eggs. And I mean, I ate about 2 or 3 bites and I was like, I can't. Even the orange juice was super, super sweet. And so I had to call for a manager and tell her it's like this. I'm not paying for this. And while I was telling her this, as far as this much sugar is ridiculous, there's more sugar in here. And I told her it's like I'm a baker. I bake. There's more sugar in this than there is in a cake. And then I had to excuse myself and got up and ran to the bathroom and threw up. And it was like I was throwing up gummy bears. It was just so sweet. I had a stomach ache from that. I could not eat for about 12 or 13 hours. And while we were leaving the place, I could feel I was going to throw up, continue to throw up. But I was just shocked to see that there are full grown adults out here. And it's like that episode of the Twilight Zone where that kid can make things appear and reappear and his dinner is like ice cream cones and candy and M&Ms and M's and stuff like that. And it turned out that that's just normal. So it was very difficult. I had to go out of my way to find food out here And due to so many people from outside the area moving in with, pallets that they could taste stuff, these places were doing very well. And now today, 9 years later, they're all doing exceptionally well because there's just no actual food. There's not much food in the area. But it was a real shock. It was a real culture shock for me because even around the rest of the Midwest, they view this area as far as don't go through there, don't communicate with people there, don't eat anything there. It was so bad when I showed up. I kept asking my ex-wife. I'm like, at the time fiance, like, what is that smell? I kept holding my mouth and like, what is that smell? And then it turned out it was the water system. No one else could smell it, but it smelled like old rotten mildew. And I could taste it. I was actually sick for about 3 weeks, I'll say, and vomiting the first few days because the smell of the water treatment plants and just the sewer system or the piping system with that water was so strong that it was just very gross. But that's when I found out the water here was very dangerous. It's way more dangerous than water in Mexico, and you have to acclimate to it. But I use water filters. I don't drink the stuff out here because it burns my throat from all the chemical. It burns my throat really bad. But anyway, that's what it's like with the more of the white neighborhoods like Valparaiso, Hobart, things like that within Northwest Indiana. You get in the black neighborhoods like Gary, it's cool, totally cool. Cool people, good food. But yeah, that's what it was like when I first came here.